Good morning.
Good morning.
We're a little late.
Wake up, everyone. It is Saturday.
Wake
September.
up, it's 10:45.
I know, but it's Labor Day weekend. What even time? It's 10:48.
10:48.
10:48 in the morning, and our house is still sleepy. Our son probably went to sleep at 2 o'clock this morning or something. I think I heard him. He was up editing video, so to us it still feels quiet. And if you're living in the Central Valley, you know that it is going to be 108, 110 this weekend. And so grab your muumuus, which I have done, put them on, throw a belt around it to try to, make yourself look a little fashionable while you're trying to be cool in 110 degree weather.
And our daughter just texted, I guess it's going to be 109 in Calabasas today.
Yeah, that's brutal.
So only 105 in Fresno. In the Malibu area 109.
That's brutal. They're on the other side of the hills, and so it gets a little bit hot there. But they have a pool, so they'll be all right.
Okay.
Yeah, so good morning. I'm Ashley.
We have a pool too.
So that's where we're going to be after
good.
this most of the day.
Right.
And you won't be doing any cooking out, except for Monday you will, when it's only 111.
Okay, good.
Anyway, welcome
I'm going to
everyone.
cook out at 7 a.m., however.
Probably, yes. It is Labor Day weekend. This is the Nonpartisan Evangelical. That's Paul. I'm Ashley, his wife. And we live in Fresno, California. And this is our Saturday morning coffee time where we get to just hang out, reflect on the week, think about what's going on, offer some thoughts, kind of debrief a little bit with each other, and then look ahead for the next week. I will say that I am not drinking coffee this morning. I am water only because these bad girls that are on my teeth, I got
bad girls?
They're bad. I wouldn't say bad boys, but I'm gonna say they're female. I
feel like I need to turn the shot a little bit. What do you think?
I'm good with that.
Are you?
I'm feeling like I'm dominating this camera angle right here, and I'm not so sure the muumuu is the right call for having this much of the camera angle.
Are you really wearing a muumuu? Is that a muumuu?
Okay, so the backstory on this is if you've been to the website therealreal.com, designer stuff used, right? So it's like a consignment thing, and I've gotten some really good deals. So then I just got on a roll of like everything on this website is cute. It must be, right? It's this high-end stuff, but it's at prices I can afford. And so I'm like, I need a dress that's like kind of cool, sundress, whatever. It's really hot. So I get this. I'm convinced that it's really cute. I put it on. Our 20-year-old daughter looks at me and she was like, no. I'm like, but I got it on the Real. She's like, I don't care. You cannot wear that. So I am wearing it because it's going to be so hot, and she's not here.
Okay.
She won't probably wear this. But anyway, what I was saying is these bad girls on my teeth, I got Invisaligners.
Right.
And so I can't drink coffee anymore.
What a bummer.
So our coffee talk with Paul and Ashley is now water and coffee.
Water and coffee.
So
Fair enough.
you hear me lisping, I keep saying I feel like Cindy Brady on the episode where she got braces. That's because...
Well, Cindy Brady always had a lisp, didn't she?
I know, but then they had an episode where she got braces and she was teased and everything, and I feel like that kid.
Okay.
So I've been practicing. She sells seashells by the seashore.
Nice. Well, I haven't made fun of you for it. So.
No. And a lot of people say they can't tell, but I think I sound ridiculous. Anyway, that is not the topic of our time together. Thanks for joining in.
But any Brady Bunch reference is good, and every time we have pork chops in the house, we both say pork chops and applesauce.
Which is not Brady Bunch, though, right?
Oh, yes, it is.
It is?
That's Peter Brady.
I thought it was from Popeye, the cartoon.
No, that's spinach.
No, I know, but I thought Wimpy when he whatever. Okay,
he wanted hamburgers. No, yeah. Peter. He was trying. This is a great conversation today. Peter was trying to have a different personality.
Oh, okay.
So he was acting. So now he was acting like Humphrey Bogart.
Okay.
And so he asked Alice, "What are we having for dinner?" And she says, "Pork chop and applesauce." And he says, "Pork chop and applesauce."
So for 26 years, you and I have been married. And we have probably had pork chops at least 10 times a year for that 26 years. Yeah. So on 260 occasions, you have done that.
Yes.
And I had no idea what your reference was.
You just thought I was just saying it.
No, I mean, I knew it was some pop culture reference, but I thought it was a cartoon.
No, it was Peter Brady.
Oh my gosh. That's fantastic.
And by the way, Bobby Brady's mom used to live in Fresno. All roads always lead back to Fresno. Wasn't Bobby the youngest one?
Yeah.
Mike Lookinland or whatever?
I secretly had a crush on him.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, comment section on the show today. You can join us. Who was your childhood TV crush?
Okay, so full confession, just because this is like shock value right here for the interland. I also, when I was in grade school, like 5, 6 years old, early grade school, I had a crush on Spanky from Little Rascals. And
that's a good one.
so my staff this year for my birthday was in May, so it was COVID, you know, so they did a drive-by birthday party, and they brought big poster boards, and they blew up Spanky's face and glued it on there, and like drove down the street with Spanky, and all our neighbors were like, what is the deal with Spanky? But he was a strong leader, so.
Yes, he was. Yes, he was. That was your childhood TV crush.
Yeah. And Wonder Dog, the cartoon.
Wonder Dog?
Never mind. We're getting too far.
Hong Kong Phooey. I love that cartoon. Who was my childhood TV crush?
Oh, I know.
Who?
At least the kid on 8 is Enough. The young girl, the youngest one. Nichols. Something. What's her name?
Oh, Christy McNichol.
Christy McNichol.
She wasn't on 8 is Enough.
Oh.
But, yeah, that's true. I had forgotten about her. I was thinking like Valerie Bertinelli, probably.
Yeah,
from,
she was so.
And when
pretty.
she married Eddie Van Halen, it was kind of like,
yeah,
what?
That seemed like a misfit.
Yeah,
she's on cooking shows now.
I know. Isn't that funny? Well,
okay, the world is like totally in disarray around us, and we are talking about
every once in a while you just got to talk about nonsense to not go crazy.
All right, well, let's get serious because we have some important things to discuss.
Okay, we do.
So this week was interesting, I think, just reflecting on as we run up to the national election in November, and you know, kind of the space for the nonpartisan evangelical is you're always drawing a spotlight on just exactly how are American Christians showing up in community, in national discourse, and in national politics, because we have now for over 50 years as evangelicals shown up a lot in national politics and in the name of Jesus. So I think this is a time in our lives where we're like just pushing back from that, going like, wait a second, like what exactly is it that we're representing to the world? How exactly are we putting on display the love of God as modeled by Jesus? And you are asking a lot of probing and provoking questions. You are making a lot of provocative statements about maybe we've really gotten it wrong. So that's the big lead up in case you haven't ever watched this before.
Yeah.
So that brings us to this week. Tell us about, from your view, kind of what was the dynamic out there?
Well, and hi to Sarah, who's saying hi to us out there from Lebanon, Tennessee, by the way. I wonder where Lebanon, Tennessee is. But
I'll have to look that up.
And so, yeah, you can make your comments in there. If you have questions, we'll try to answer, but glad you all are watching. This week was pretty interesting in the world of what I call partisan right-wing evangelicalism. We had a couple of things happen. Of course, The Atlantic came out with a story about the president denigrating dead soldiers, basically, and apparently in front of General John Kelly, saying things about dead soldiers and why would they do what they do when they were at the grave of John Kelly's son who died in Afghanistan. And it's a pertinent issue, and so of course one of the things we hear is somebody's fake news. You know, that's of course the president's response to this. And interesting, we actually have a friend that works for The Atlantic, so I asked him, you know, is the story real? What can you tell us? And he's like,
did you?
Yeah.
James Fallows?
James Fallows,
okay.
Yeah. He told us, he said, I know 3 of the 4 sources. He said, I didn't have anything to do with the story, but he said, this is what we've been told for a long time about how Trump reacts to the military. And in fact, we saw it in public when he said this about John McCain, that he doesn't consider McCain a hero. He considers people who aren't captured to be heroes.
But the thing of it is that was in 2016 when he said that,
right.
And at the time, and I was already, you know, not loving the Trump candidacy, but at the time, I remember thinking like, oh, that's just shock value, like that's just a whatever sort of traditional institutions think or whatever. He's just likes to come along and blow it up. And I thought it was a ridiculous thing to say, but I didn't think it had like roots in an actual like deeply held position of his.
Right.
And I think that's what this story is actually making me see is like, no. This is actually a pretty genuine feeling for him.
That it's sort of the tone of voice. And there's parts of the story in dispute. By the way, Fox News has verified some really damaging parts of the story, but but it's more about sort of the tone of the idea. And I think it's really our struggle with the president is just he seems like a person that isn't really capable of empathizing or having emotion around anything that doesn't personally benefit him, which makes him damaging as a leader of any entity, and particularly as a country. But that in and of itself isn't the problem for me. The problem is the hypocrisy that this reveals in us as an evangelical people, that many of our friends would say, those athletes that take a knee during the national anthem should be deported from the country because they're disrespecting the military. But then when we actually have a story that the president disrespects the military, we say, yeah, but abortion.
Yeah, exactly. Supreme Court
justices, and we're willing to free. So it continues to expose our heart of hypocrisy, that we're really about winning political battles for what we consider good ends. I don't think that people are doing it from the best of their heart, but I'm always looking at ways to hold up the mirror and say, see, look, we're becoming hypocrites because of this. And do we think God endorses us being hypocrites even if our end goal is good? And if that hypocrisy then begins to drive people from the church and from the gospel, is it okay with God? And we say, well, God, as long as I'm voting Republican and voting against abortion, we're good, right? And I think God would say, that's not what it says in the Bible. And when Jesus said, you've heard it say, don't murder, but I say, don't call your brother a fool, or you're the one that deserves to have hellfire. I think he's being pretty clear that how we treat people in relationship is more important than our ability to follow the rules. And so then add that to the other thing that happened this week that really caught my eye was Franklin Graham, who's, of course, the son of Billy Graham, evangelical leader, Samaritan's Purse, makes a big salary from there. And John MacArthur from Grace Community Church in Southern California, both came out publicly making statements that basically saying, if you're a Christian, you cannot vote against Trump. You have to vote for Trump if you're a Christian. That it's almost a litmus test of your Christianity of whether you're going to vote for Trump or Biden. And my response to that was like, that is an anti-Christ statement. That is a partnering with a spirit that's not Christ-like. Because I don't think Jesus would agree with that statement to begin with. But also, what we see in the Bible a few times, we see Jesus saying to James and John, hey, when you want to destroy that village that rejected me, you don't know the spirit you're of. Yeah. And he turns to Peter and says, get behind me, Satan. So I think when Jesus says these things to James and John and Peter, who are his three most closest inner circle people, he's not saying you're horrible, demonically possessed people. He's saying, hey, right now, you're partnering with a thought process, a spirit, a mindset that's not from heaven. And I want to tell you to come out of that. Yeah. And both times they were doing it out of the fervor of their heart. Peter wanted to protect Jesus' life. And James and John wanted to protect Jesus' honor and punish people for rejecting Jesus. And I think a lot of times in evangelicalism today, that's our heart. God, punish those people, or let's win victories over those people who have rejected you. And I think he's saying, through me sometimes, you don't know the spirit you're partnered with right now, but it's not from heaven, and let's turn that around.
Okay, so this is the Nonpartisan Evangelical. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Cindy Brady. This is Peter. Just kidding. You have to scroll back and watch the beginning of this to catch that joke. But anyway, so thanks for tuning in, and really appreciate you guys.
I'd rather be Greg. Greg was cooler.
Yeah, he was like out of my league. I felt.
He was a little bit old. Yeah.
He was a little old. Anyway, totally lost my train of thought there, because now I'm thinking about Marsha.
So we were talking about the military issue.
I know. No, I actually didn't lose my train of thought.
Okay.
Okay. So Nonpartisan Evangelical. If you're just tuning in and you want to know more about kind of the stuff that backs up the things you just said, Paul, you can go to npepodcast.com. That's N as in non, P as in partisan, E as in evangelical, podcast.com, and subscribe. There's also an insider's email list there, so make sure you sign up for that and you'll get like fresh content from Paul and that sort of thing. But I think for people who, it's really awesome, and I love this because we're starting to find people are contacting us through your website or social media or whatever, and they're saying like either I've given up on the church and people who represent Christ in our country. They don't understand the pain that I'm in, et cetera, et cetera. Or people who have had nothing to do with the Christian church in America who are reaching out and saying, you guys are creating a space where I feel I can come in and learn more about God and about, this different sort of view of Jesus. So we're really excited about that. So if you're not really following, why is it that a Franklin Graham or John MacArthur would say something, if it seems so outrageous to you that they would say, if you're a Christian, you have to vote for Donald Trump. If that feels really outrageous, go to his website. There are some really good blogs that kind of take apart this evangelical mindset, and a lot of it is around the issue of abortion. And so you've got a good blog on hey, if this is the thing we're anchoring everything to, we really better make sure that's God's heart, and you kind of break that down a little bit. Mm-hmm. And there's other content on there that if you're wondering how it is that evangelicals got to this place, that can help explain it, but almost in a reverse way, because you're actually deconstructing those arguments. Yeah. So anyway, I just want to make that crosswalk for people who may be walking or stumbling into this conversation and not really following. For those of you who have been in the evangelical church, you are watching right now either because you hate what we're saying and you want to blow us up on social media, and this is just a fun kind of sparring time, which is fine. I don't think that you'll find anybody less enthusiastic about those kinds of social media battles than this guy right here. So that's okay. Or you do have experience in the evangelical church and you're also asking yourself hey, this doesn't seem right, the way we're showing up for people in our communities and in our country at this time. So all of that to say, that
was a big setup.
It was a big setup.
Yeah.
It's kind of my specialty.
Yes, it is.
We were talking about this last night, that my penchant for details is only matched by
my disdain for details.
Your disdain for them. So we are probably the odd couple in some ways, but I think we have mutual respect for each other's disdain.
Yes.
So that's how we fit. But anyway,
I can tell you, when we're talking to people, we have to summarize a little bit.
This is social. This is new media.
Oh, okay.
This is why people like to be on these, Facebook Lives, because you don't have to follow the rules of everything is a sound bite. Am I right? Am I right? Am I right?
Well,
one's listening.
There's an in-between sound bite and massive over detail.
I remember one time you told me massive over detail.
I mean, extremes. Okay. I'm not saying.
I remember one time, I think I was asking if you thought I was funny or something ridiculous like that, and you're like, "You're kind of a long form joke teller." That's such a kind way to tell me that you think I talk too much. But anyway.
I don't think you talk too much. I really don't. And I actually think you're you're great at this.
Okay.
And so and the very tiny but B-U-T, not two T's, but is occasionally you over-explain.
But I never lose where I'm at. I always know why.
I call it Ashley Splain. What, Ashplain? You're Ashplain.
So that will be the title.
There's mansplaining and now there's ashplaining.
That will be the title. Well, we have a lot of options for the title of this podcast. It could be Ashley Hart Spanky. It could be Cindy Brady and Peter Brady having coffee. It could
pork
be
chops and applesauce.
It could be Ashplain.
Ashplain, okay.
Okay, but you know what? It's a 3-day weekend, so I'm a little
We're
whatever,
all over the place.
off the grid. But
we're getting a laugh, though. Adam's laughing with us.
Thank you. I'm getting to my point. My point is this: the reflection on the military thing. We were watching some commentators last night saying this is a real political crisis for the president, maybe as significant as COVID, which time will tell on that. And they were coming at it from a political angle, and they were showing videos, impromptu videos of people that had posted on social media who, you never know, but they look like Trump voters, white, older men with military background. And they were saying they were really genuinely upset and pouring out their hearts and
in pain.
And most of them had lost a son in military service. So I can hardly say this without crying. I mean, I just watched this for 5 seconds last night. I just started weeping, in part because thinking about these parents losing their kids, but also because what I started to hear in these people's voices was this, to me, the true heart of Jesus for people. And they were saying, like, how dare you say that service for others and sacrifice, and I'm not trying to make this necessarily about the military, because God knows we've used our military power inappropriately as a nation, but the heart of, I will sacrifice for other people, I will be in service to people I don't know, that's the gold that's in our nation, and that's the gold that is reflected in military service. And I heard these people start to say, no, President Trump, that is not what you are representing, is not what we are about. What we are about is this call to service and this call to sacrifice and ultimately to community. And in my heart, I actually leapt for joy, because I thought maybe this is the turning. Maybe this is the moment where we see the contrast. Do we want to be this or do we want to be this? And we choose this.
Yeah. Yeah, what they were saying was, President Trump, my son is not a loser and not a sucker. And I think that's some of the idea that, again, to me, the thing I want to be careful about is actually this is not about Donald Trump. We've been talking about this much longer than Donald Trump has ever been involved in politics.
Yeah.
This has been growing and coming for a long time in evangelicalism, that the life modeled for us by Jesus was a life of a suffering servant. He came as somebody to give his life for people that were his enemies, and the religious people said, no, we're supposed to be fighting for power. We want to restore our country to its place of power, because that's God's will, for a Messiah to appear and throw the Roman government out. And Jesus never once said, hey, Zealots, great work, let's throw that Roman government out. Or, hey, Pharisees, great work, let's make sure we implement biblical principles into our civil law. He actually resisted that at all costs. And this idea of somehow giving your life in Vietnam for a war that I think was massively immoral, but that the soldier was somehow a sucker for being there. And that's seeping into our attitude just a little bit, that the idea of being willing even to lose political battles to maintain your ethics and morality is for suckers, that abortion or Supreme Court judges or any of the things are so important we can give up any morality or any biblical principle for that pursuit is a big problem. And that's ultimately the mirror we're trying to hold up here, is to say, evangelicals, even if you're 100% right in your theological basis for this, but the world sees you in the way that it's looking at you now, is that what God would have you do? Is that divisiveness, that desire to call people baby murderers or do whatever that makes our voice marginalized, okay with God? Because what the religious people were doing around Jesus wasn't okay with him. And I think if he were here today, wrote a book about it, he would say, hey guys, how you're acting is not okay with me right now. And I just want people to think that through as they're confronted by these issues. Because what I see right now, again, is the same people who are saying, don't take a knee during the national anthem are now jumping up to protect the president at all cost in this.
Yeah.
And I just want us to see the hypocrisy in ourselves in that.
Well, and I feel like that is kind of your unique voice and message, is that you are the sand in the pants of the evangelical church.
Yeah, I'm not sure I like that analogy, but sure, okay.
All up in the, never mind.
How about the sand in the oyster that's going to make the pearl?
That's better, actually,
that?
because I want to suggest that I like to bring focus to the pearl. Okay, so this is so you got to get, this is like a two-step kind of thing. You have to get that that this agitating message. We need this agitating message. Hey, are we really sure? Is this God's heart for people? Are we reflecting who Jesus was on earth? Like really? So that's you.
Right.
And then from my point of view, what I'm seeing is, this is really God helping some very, very unholy and unhealthy things come to the surface that have just barely been covered for the last 50 years, 100 years, 400 years, however far back you want to go. And that God is really allowing this to surface in this generation. And those of us who are Gen Xers, who have ties to the boomers, our grandparents who were World War II generation, and then, we're raising millennials and Gen Zs, we're kind of in the middle saying okay, we understand this history and what we want to leave for the next generations. are a society that has surfaced this stuff, dealt with it, and like set people up for the next 50 to 100 years. So that's the pearl.
Yeah.
And that's why I was getting emotional and thinking about what I saw on the news last night is as I'm saddened by the pain those folks are representing and communicating, but also aware that this could be a turning moment for people. And I don't mean political, like, honestly, like, God bless President Obama for being a person of hope and declaring hope a lot. And I think he opened the doors, but it's up to us at the ground level. Like, the people of the United States of America have to choose. I don't care what the political person is at top, what they're saying. We have to choose who we want to be as a people. And then we enable our leader to be that person. So if we're like, hey, we choose service, we choose sacrifice, we choose to see the best in each other, even though it's like really uncomfortable at times, we choose to bridge gaps. If that's who we choose to be at the local level, then that's who our leaders can be.
That's really good. And so it may be our elected officials are stuck in their politics, our evangelical leaders are sort of stuck in their mindset and doing what they have to do for their vein, but the people can still rise up and say, no, this is not our heart. And you're doing some really great work in that sphere here in Fresno through your job. And why don't you share a little bit about the things you're doing around issues of racial inequality, socioeconomic inequality? It's really amazing stuff.
Well, okay, so, however, I'm feeling like you said I talked too long.
What?
And so I already did my long lead up. Do you really want me to talk about it?
No, I actually don't have anything to throw in at this part, so I'm transitioning to our next segment. And I thought you did a fabulous job of setting up the setup to the transition to what we had already discussed for our next segment. So well done.
Thank you. For those of you who are like, what the heck are these two doing? We actually always kind of have a little bit of a plan of things we want to talk about.
We do.
And so, as messy and disorganized as this discourse may seem, we were talking last night, like maybe we should lift up some stuff happening at the local level and kind of make it practical, because we're also very, like, I don't know, theoretical and philosophical most Saturday mornings. Yeah. So that's what I was thinking would be helpful. So I'll just do it real quick because I also want to spend time on your book.
Okay.
So I work at the local community foundation in Fresno. We cover like the 6 counties of Central California, Central Valley Community Foundation, and we started a project last year in partnership with 150 organizations, CBOs, and local government organizations and private sector groups, called Developing the Region's Inclusive and Vibrant Economy, or DRIVE for short, Fresno Drive. Our website is fresnodrive.org. And we challenged ourselves last year as a kind of coalition of community, grassroots, and institutional leaders to grow the economy in an inclusive way. After learning from research from the Urban Institute that Fresno is one of the least racially inclusive economies in all of America and the worst in California.
So what does that mean?
That means
worst racially inclusive.
That means that, so for one thing, we're almost the worst from overall economic growth over the last 40 years. So it kind of like the economy is distressed, and it is a commodity-based economy. It's basically ag and government and healthcare. So we don't have enough tradable sectors here, and the unemployment is consistently high. The incomes are consistently low across all sectors and all races and genders. But if you look at how folks who are African American or brown, non-white communities in Fresno, they are actually the least included in our economy of any other large city in California and across the country. So if you're black or brown, like, it's bad for everybody, but if you're black or brown, it's going to be worse for you here than any other place economically.
Does least included mean they have less of a possibility to get ahead?
Yeah, lower incomes, higher unemployment, bigger wealth gaps.
And so all of those bad things in our local economy hit the communities of people of color more than some of our less diverse populations.
Which indicts. It's not even a friendly challenge. It's like a broadcasting from the top of Mount Everest with every amplification you can bring to it. There is an issue with systemic and structural racism here. Period. Full stop.
Yeah. So
that was really indicting and confronting of me, because I've spent 20 years doing this kind of work, thinking that, like, hey, if we fix the economy for everybody's going to benefit, and got really challenged by colleagues, community advocates, and others saying, like, what evidence do you have that if the economy grows top line, that it's actually going to benefit people of color in our community? Because it hasn't historically. And I was like, oh man, that is, I mean, data speaks, and that's
a fact.
True. Huh? That's a fact.
Because I hear people all the time say, well, African American unemployment all-time low before COVID, so therefore the economy was great for African Americans.
Yeah, but still like 2.5 times the wealth gap in Fresno, and still like 150% the unemployment and incomes that are a fraction of white. So while it might,
so if you're like this already, one group here, one group here,
and maybe like it got like this, for black
like
people,
that.
yeah. So, or maybe the gap got closed a little bit, but it's still a huge gap.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good. See? That really tells the story, doesn't it?
Okay.
And what I think what I've seen that really stuck with me is, and I think maybe it's our friends at Every Neighborhood Partnership here in Fresno that have the stats about a young person, a child born in certain zip codes or in a zip code in Fresno versus, say, our zip code. There's like a 20-year life gap. Like this child born in this zip code has an expectation they will live 20 years longer than this child born
in a neighborhood roughly 8 miles away.
Yeah.
Yep, 8 miles. And
that's an average.
Yeah, and I actually think that's like a public data source. ENP, you probably, they publish it a lot. A lot of community groups lift that up as a like, hello, can we please get some help over here kind of data point. So it's widely reported, but I do believe it's public health. And
we have somebody asking right now, where would they go to find that data? Do you have a resource you can point to?
Life,
I'm assuming that what you're talking about, the socioeconomic
gap. Go to fresnodrive.org, and click on data, and then scroll down a little bit and click on data walk slides. And there are about 30 slides there that compare and contrast, disaggregated by race, 3 major types of indicators, one around the economy, one around human capital and educational attainment, and one around neighborhood quality in Fresno. So that's a good, just like blanket kind of.
And that'll also give your resources for the data.
Yes, there are citations on each slide.
Got it.
Yes.
So you did that very well.
Thanks.
And what I love about what you're doing in that is you really are bringing together very, very diverse populations that in our history in Fresno have not been at the table together.
Can I say it a little differently?
Sure.
Because I'm not the hero here, and I'm not the center of this story.
Right.
I'm honored and privileged to support people who are coming together. And I would say this, community groups have found one another. They are working together. They are modeling leadership and grassroots connection and building the capacity of residents. Kind of the big next level of work here is bringing institutions. So larger organizations, local government, universities, education partners that, when you run a public agency, I mean, it's a huge undertaking, and just to deliver daily services, whether it's K-12 or the city or whatever. And so you kind of just can tend to be in a monolithic space. And so Drive is bridging those community, civic, business groups along with those institutions. And I honestly, I'm excited about this, and it's moving forward for the very reason that we institutional leaders, which I told my friends this week on the Race Equity Committee, like, I am your poster child white institutional leader.
Yeah. So
like I've only really worked in institutional space, whether it's Fresno State or a large nonprofit or the city. So anyway, for those of us who have had those roles, it is our time to step back, and it is our time to listen, and it is our time to pretty much just drop everything, any other agenda, and treat the agenda of race equity in Fresno as if it is the only and the most important agenda, because I actually believe that it is. And all the other things that we care about are going to ripple out of how and whether we respond to the real disparate outcomes in our community. Like that is actually going to be what causes, I think, this logjam to finally be broken in our community.
That's good.
Yeah.
And what I really love about what you're saying there is, again, back to your point before, the people are rising up. It's even if the leaders are somewhat tone deaf to what happened, we as a people can rise up and say, we want to see this happen in our community. And so we think some great things are happening in Fresno, that these groups are coming together, and everybody's having to sacrifice a little bit to be at the table. And some of us are having to learn to hear things that are really hard to hear, seem unfair. And that's part of what we think Jesus modeled. Instead of fighting political battles and fighting for our rights and our causes, say, I'm going to put my weapons down on the table, and I'm going to hear hard things because I want to lean into relationship.
And I want to make that really like practical and clear for people.
Okay.
Here is the sacrifice that I see happening. So the community groups that are willing to come to the table and sit with institutional leaders, they are chastised in their communities for sitting at the white man's table. Their credibility is on the line. If the shared work product does not surface in a way that really gets to the heart of the matter in addressing racial disparity in Fresno, then their credibility, when they go back to their neighborhood meeting or to their funders or whatever and report that, they were a part of this initiative, they are all paying a price to be a part of it. So that's sacrifice on one side. And then for the institutional leaders, there's potential criticism that, boy, you're focusing too much on an equity lens, and you have to deal with the issues and concerns of the whole, and just the sacrifice of power, and being willing to listen, and just like shutting up, which is not what I'm doing right now, but
it's good stuff. And some people are asking for the links. I think it looks like Greg may have put the link on there, and so thank you guys. No, that's probably not the link you're talking about.
Okay, FresnoDrive.org is the...
We'll type it into the comments after we're finished doing the live.
But I want to say 3 quick things that make this even, like, I'm being serious, that are just 3, and they are simple.
Okay.
Because this is going to be like, for people, like, demystify. Like, this happened this week. This was my kind of breakthrough, was the concept of inclusive economic development. Like, we want the economy to grow in a way that benefits people who have been historically marginalized and shut out. Like, isn't that like, yay, we can say yes to that. That's not a hard thing. But how the hell do you actually do it? What are the practical steps? Well, through a lot of work and some really great support from some outside researchers and consultants and great local leaders kind of chewing on this, we came up with 3 things that are going to really be the most meaningful things we can do. Number 1, anybody working in this initiative needs to go through training and constantly be in community where you're learning about like shared understanding and analysis of racial disparity in Fresno and in our nation and the world more broadly. So submitting to that, whether it's a reading list or in our case, the Drive Executive Committee, we've been doing workshops. So ground yourself in that, number 1. Number 2, commit to creating space for community members to come alongside and help make decisions about these initiatives. So if you're a big institution, you invite people into every now and then because you're required by law to do like public meetings. But it's not that. It's actually investing in pathways for residents to engage with and actually be a part of decision making on these programs to move forward. Number 2. Number 3 is we have to specifically invest dollars into programs that are proven to be effective to close racial economic disparity. So put your money where your mouth is the 3rd one.
Nice.
Does that
so you're putting your time and your money where your mouth is.
Yeah, so
on both sides
it's
of the
learning,
equation.
be open, and learn about history to guide your decisions going forward. Make way for residents who are impacted by structural racism to actually be a part of decision making, and then put your money into initiatives that help make up the difference.
Yeah. And I think that's so good, because the danger and what we're seeing a lot of is people are scurrying to their corners around the issue of race issues, the issues of race, and everybody's got to make some sacrifice. And again, I think we would say kind of the people from our genre, the sort of white evangelical space, we have a greater responsibility because we claim to be God's representatives on earth, and we have to lay down our defenses of where we may want to run to and say, oh, BLM is bad or somebody else is bad. That doesn't mean we can't say, hey, we don't want businesses to be burned down, but we can say, but I'm not going to let that stop me from leaning into these relationships, doing the hard work, putting my money where my mouth is, my time where my mouth is, and see things changed. And so that's what's really exciting, I think, about what you're doing.
Thanks.
Because we're seeing people really, really do that.
I think so. I mean, we're trying. We get points in Fresno for trying to put these things into place, and that's just kind of our trademark. There are a lot of ways in which we lack resources that other communities have, and they are probably further down the path. But we're just at this ground zero moment, and we get to create this space in this generation, which is kind of fun.
Yeah. So somebody's asking, how can the church be involved? Well, the church can be involved when its leaders start saying this matters.
Yeah.
This matters. If the church is saying no, abortion is really all that matters, your church is not going to get into this. It's going to be a stumbling block to it. But if you're willing to say, okay, that's still an important issue to us, but we're willing to set that aside as Jesus modeled, to be able to lean into a relationship that can improve our communities, which, by the way, there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of commands to do that in the Bible, then we can see things change. So it does really start with a church sort of laying aside its ideology to be able to lean into the theology of Jesus, saying, love your neighbor and love your enemy as yourself.
And practically speaking, if you're in the Fresno area, there are some awesome ways the churches can get involved, thanks to Phil Sky from On Ram's Church, and you and Andrew File from ENP. You guys built a curriculum called
Vision 22.
Vision 22. It's designed as a 6-week, small group course.
5 week, I
5
think.
week.
Yeah.
And it's online, and it's all about the history of racial segregation and structural racism in Fresno, and the manifestations that we see all around our community today. So it's a learning opportunity, and more than anything, you could probably say oh, is it the perfect curriculum? I don't know. But the point is this.
No, it's very much not perfect.
Submit yourself to the conversation, because as you do that, your heart gets changed in ways that you wouldn't happen if you don't submit in some way. Yeah. So
I mean, part of what it is looking at our history of the church towards race relations, and we use the example of, I think, 1957 Little Rock Central High School was in a battle to be integrated. It was an all-white school at the time because there were separate high schools, and there had been a federal ruling that it had to be integrated, and so these 8 black students are going to go in the school, and we used the example that there was a women's prayer group in the town in Little Rock there that was having prayer vigils on the steps of the high school, asking God to stop this evil of integration. That has been at times the heart of the church, to pray to God to stop racial equality, in a feeling that God didn't want racial equality to happen. And so just being able to look and say, our history with this is not very good, and maybe we need to look at that history and say, are we perpetuating that history today when we kind of have some of the reactions we're having today?
So I'm realizing that almost every Saturday when we gather, we always we start with the conversation, we end up with abortion, gay marriage, and racism in the church.
Okay.
That's kind of our headlines,
Well, I think the racial issues are just so important in the church right now.
Well, and really, and pardon me for interrupting.
In our culture.
But there is a reason why we do always come back to that, right? It's because race, protecting structural racism and disintegration, was the beginning of the political activism, at least this generation's of political activism in the American evangelical church. Yeah. Right? That it was the mobilizing thing, and then the political operatives at the time were like, we can't really come around and say that. So let's pick this other topic, and that became abortion. Right. And so I'm not doing this topic justice, but I mean, this is documented. This is not just
And we have blogs on the website at npepodcast.com.
Yes. So we're going on a little bit longer today because it's a 3-day weekend. We're going to just kind of collapse. But we should probably pivot to our third topic.
Are putting some great stuff on here. We've linked to the curriculum at vision22.org, and we've got some people are linking to the history of the Little Rock 9. That's what it was, yeah. And I think, these are the pivotal issues in some ways when we're saying in the Bible, when Jeremiah 29:7 says, seek the welfare of your city, for in its welfare you find your welfare. We believe that's a very pivotal central tenet of being a follower of God. And we see it all through the prophets of the Old Testament, that justice in your city is a big part of being a God follower. And what we see in our culture today is like, well, yeah, that's important, but abortion, but salvation of souls to go to heaven, those are the things that get in the way of us really being able to pursue that justice. And we're saying, no, right now, at this time in history, we don't know all the times in history, but right now, you and I are saying, we just have a sense that God is saying, church, this is what I really care about.
Yeah.
And this is the thing that's going to heal your land, that if my people will humble themselves, pray, seek my face, turn from their ways, submit themselves to this process, that will heal your land. Not a law criminalizing the things you don't like in the Bible. Those aren't going to fix the issues. But bringing justice to people and the underlying, so like with abortion, let's look at some of the underlying issues that drive people to it, and let's resolve those and see if that doesn't bring some of those numbers down. Now I'm getting off on a tangent.
Yeah, that's all right. You're the sand, I'm the pearl.
But I think that's anyway, that's what we see as it's a central core issue, because ultimately, but abortion is what we hear on an ongoing basis when we're saying, but this matters to God, but abortion.
And we have to put a link up on that tells the story of how the religious leaders, was it Falwell? Remember the
Jerry Falwell, yes.
Yeah, it was him.
Yeah, we have a blog about that.
Okay.
We could put a link to it.
So what was the guy's name, the political operative?
Paul Weyrich.
Okay. So Google that, or go to Paul's website, npepodcast.com, and maybe you could resurface put it up.
You're referring to the choice made by Republican operatives in partnership with evangelical leaders, this guy Paul Weyrich and Jerry Falwell Sr.
Yes.
Which Jerry Falwell Jr. has been in the news a little bit lately, but I digress.
Yes.
Jerry Falwell Sr. and Paul Weyrich got together, and because of issues around racial equity
and integrating schools,
like
Falwell
Liberty College of Jerry Falwell, they decided to make abortion a political issue. They made the determination that we can never get Christians to vote around racial segregation issues, but we can get them to vote around abortion, and made a very determined and cynical decision to make abortion a primary voting issue for Christians.
To win political seats, to ultimately stop integration, and preserve
to get Jimmy Carter out of office,
to preserve the charitable tax status of these private schools that didn't want to integrate. That's how we got to the point where the religious right organized around abortion.
So there's the tie with racial issues, that Liberty College, Jerry Falwell's, which is now Liberty University, and Bob Jones University were being urged and compelled by the Jimmy Carter administration that they were going to have to allow minorities into their student population, or else they were going to lose some tax benefits that they were getting.
Yes.
And that really angered our evangelical leaders. And out of that, remember, this was in 1979. Roe v. Wade passed in 1973. So this is 6 years later that all of a sudden, hey, we need to get Jimmy Carter voted out and Ronald Reagan voted in because he'll be more friendly to us.
Yep.
And we're going to use abortion as a key issue to do that.
Yeah. Okay, so we should probably pivot to our last topic.
It's a good history lesson.
Honestly, that's it's such a fascinating thing to read about, and really, prove us wrong. If that, help. If that's not, I mean, we've been trying to kind of pull these threads together. They're pretty well documented, but if others have information they want to present that's not accurate, bring it on.
Go for it.
Yeah. Okay, so I wanna make sure folks know about this. Joseph Comes to Town. It's a novel by Paul Swearengin. It says on the front.
Who?
By Peter Brady.
Oh no.
Just kidding. When the religious right becomes religiously wrong. When the religious right becomes religiously wrong. And it's got, this power tie, this evangelical sort of wardrobe for a preacher is the red tie, the dark suit, and the lapel pin with the cross and the flag. So what in the world is this about? Okay, so this is Paul's novel about what would happen if a Jesus-like character or a Jesus figure showed up in a modern day, relatively small town and interacted with the religious leaders and the political leaders of that town, and also the other civic community leaders, what would happen? Now, not surprisingly, we have some experience in doing this work. This is
some of the stories were semi-autobiographical.
Yes, the names have been changed to protect the innocent, and the not so innocent. But this has a lot of kind of like things that we witnessed, that we experienced as I was leading the city of Fresno and Paul was planting and growing a church, and it weaves it together in this really great story. So we want to make sure that people know about this. So you can buy it on Amazon. Yeah,
or you just go to the npepodcast.com website, click on the Joseph the Novel link, and it tells there are really 3 different ways you can access getting the book.
Yeah.
Join our Patreon community.
Yeah, and in fact, if you join, you get, at $12.99 a month, you get a copy of this.
Yeah, and now I said for a short time, I think for the next 2 weeks, if you even come in at $5.99, we'll send you an autographed copy.
Oh, okay.
Of the
So
book.
we're discounting.
It's a special deal.
It's a COVID-19 discount.
Act now.
Recognizing that you're probably finished with all your reading list at this point after 6 months of COVID, and you're looking for your next thing. So this could be your next thing. $5.99 a month. Support the work of Nonpartisan Evangelical and get a copy of this book.
Right. And what the book is really about is. The main character, Saul, who you'll meet in here, is a guy I love, and he's a good guy. He's a mega church pastor and the sort of evangelical right-wing leader of the community, and he really wants good things to happen. He just doesn't realize how blinded he's become by his ideology, and ultimately comes to understand why he's allowed himself to be blinded by his ideology that has actually caused him to do things that are opposed to what he wants to do in his heart. And that's really what I believe a lot about where evangelicals are, our belief that God is so into our ideology that our theology and ideology have become intertwined, that we miss the pain we're causing people around us by our religiousness. And so I wanted to ask you a question. So you've read the book.
Yes.
Did you think it was good?
I've lived it and I've read it.
You lived it and read it. You know some of the characters personally in it.
The inspiration for the characters.
And so what was your favorite part? What spoke to you the most in the book?
I think for me, well, like a lot of people who've read it say, like probably Patty was my favorite character.
That's the Saul's wife, the pastor's wife.
Because she's just kind of the truth teller, and she's that pastor's wife that's like eye rolling, all of the like politics of the church. So she was my favorite character. But the thing that was, really moving for me, there were several times when I was like literally like weeping reading this book. But the thing that probably was the most prominent was Saul, the megachurch pastor, and his son, who was like a young adult. Like Saul almost sacrifices his relationship with his son to defend his viewpoint and to defend his religious ways at his megachurch. I asked Paul last night, did you name Isaac, the character Isaac, for this reason? But we see in the book that Saul kind of like puts his son on the altar and raises the knife, and is willing to sacrifice the relationship.
Theoretically, not
literally. Yeah. It's a contemporary book, so like we don't do that kind of stuff anymore. In the church, but figuratively was willing, because he was just so convinced, like, no, I have to stand for these political stances. I have to be this person in my community, etc. And his son was like dying, like, what about me, and what about all these other things that you're impacting with this worldview? And Saul was like this close. I don't want to do a spoiler alert, but it gets to the point where you see this really big explosion, this conflict, and it broke my heart. It still breaks my heart even just thinking about it.
Yeah.
So,
comes down to a physical confrontation even, and so that's because Isaac is my seeker of truth in the story. That is sort of on this bridge between what he's learned and always known to what he knows that there's something else out there. And that search really upsets his father, because he sees it as a rejection of his own personal beliefs. And so as much as Saul wants to love his son, he feels like he can't violate his covenant with God for standing for this ideology. And so he's willing to sacrifice relationship, even with his own son. And this is what I see a lot in evangelicalism. We're willing to sacrifice relationship with some of us literally have lost relationships with people close to us because of this ideology and these ideological divides. And then just the church itself with the world is really, I think, willing to write off an entire generation. Sorry, I can't speak without my hands.
I have been moving this glass steadily for the last 45 minutes, and I'm going to have to put all these.
In some ways, we're writing off a relationship with an entire generation of millennials because we feel like we have to stand for these things. And so I want that heart to be broken in the demonstration of this father-son relationship. So I'm glad you caught that.
Yeah, that really, and it's been actually a while since I've read it, because I read it right when it came out, and still to this day that stands out to me.
Yeah.
And
so it deals with issues like that.
Yeah, it's a really good story. So go to the website, npepodcast.com, and sign up for the Insiders email list. You can also click on the Patreon link. If you sign up at $5.99 a month, you're going to get a free copy of this, or you can just buy the book outright.
You can buy it right on Amazon today, Kindle version, or order the paperback. But yeah, it'd be really cool if you do. And we're going to try to get some more publicity out on it. So if you can join the Patreon site, that's where our financial support comes from for this. And we're really going to try to blow up the book a little bit and let more people know that it's out there.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? Why not, right?
Why not?
Why not? Let's ask these questions now. Let's get this right for future generations and not repeat the mistakes.
We've been getting lots of comments. I love it. So we'll try to answer some after we get off the air.
We have gone on long. We've gone almost a whole hour, and at least 15 minutes was spent talking about our childhood TV crushes.
Which I think is good. I think we need to be light every once in a while.
If you tune in late, you should wait till this
I want somebody to comment. Who's your childhood TV crush?
Well, maybe
somebody put it in there. Who was your childhood TV crush? I would love to see it.
And in case you weren't watching earlier, I confessed on this Facebook Live on this Labor Day weekend that mine were Spanky from Little Rascals.
Which is just a little odd to me.
This is why I'm confessing it, because I'm realizing now how so weird that was. I mean, I was like 5, and I just thought he was so cute. But you know the funny thing? We will find and present next Saturday, so this is the teaser to tune back in next week. We will find your picture of when you were 5 or 6 years old in your little striped jacket, and then we'll hold it up next to Spanky, and you guys were like twins.
Wow.
So it was like a foreshadowing.
So you were actually attracted to me.
Yes. You were obviously my taste. You and Spanky.
Me and Spanky. Like this. That's classic. That's classic.
My God.
I would be surprised if anybody else would say Spanky was there.
Has anybody else put their childhood?
No, nobody else has put their childhood crush
I feel like I'm modeling vulnerability for all of you. Like nothing could be more ridiculous than having a crush on Spanky. Why isn't anybody following my lead and expressing their vulnerable
That's
childhood
good vulnerability. Well, and
Scooby-Doo, I
wait.
I just thought he was cute.
Scooby-Doo.
I love puppies. I love dogs. So it wasn't like that. I just loved Scooby-Doo. I loved Wonder Dog. Underdog.
Oh, Underdog or Wonder Dog?
Were they
They
the
were
same?
different. No, they're different.
Underdog. And you know, to this day.
So Wonder Dog was the dog of the Power Twins. Remember the Power Twins?
Yeah.
And Underdog was his own cartoon.
Underdog. I was Underdog.
Which had the best, by the way, absolutely the best theme song of any cartoon ever.
When I was probably 6, I had one of those plastic Halloween costumes, and I was Underdog. And here's
Underdog was cool.
You know what I think? Like honestly, I got my entire life I have loved the underdog story, including living in a city and working in a city that is like this great underdog story. And I think it's part of what I'm just wired that way.
Look at how you pulled that back.
I know. There's meaning in everything. What can I say? Meaning in everything. Like it's like I just feel like God was like, yeah, remember it's not a mistake why you like that underdog character so much.
Good.
Yeah.
So go look up the Underdog theme song. Best cartoon theme song ever. Right there with Hong Kong Phooey, which is the most
Dee saying in our
most underrated.
Dee Barnes is like got to be probably our best commenter.
She's talking about Franklin Graham.
Oh yeah. Okay, sorry. She's taking this back to serious stuff. We were moving on to childhood crushes.
Oh, here we go. Okay, Dee says her husband Jeff loved Jodie Foster.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Such a cutie.
That's a little bit of a hard one because the guy that shot Ronald Reagan had a crush on Jodie Foster too.
Right. That's a little dark. That's a little dark.
Kate says she doesn't have a childhood TV crush, but you've given her food for thought.
That's her Labor Day assignment.
And mine were Christy McNichol and what was the other one?
Valerie Bertinelli.
Valerie Bertinelli.
Yeah.
That's right. So you can look those up.
When I was a kid, I wanted to be Christy McNichol.
You did.
Yep.
And what series was she on? She was Buddy.
It wasn't Eight is Enough.
It wasn't Eight is
But
Enough.
she did do some cameos, I think, on Eight is Enough.
Oh, really?
I feel like.
All right.
Well, I don't know. We'll have to look that up. She was on so much, it seems like.
Yeah, she became like a big movie star there early.
She was really, she got really famous.
Yeah. She was on the, what was that name of it? She was in a movie where she and another girl made a bet about who would have sex first, and yeah. Oh, that's right. You probably weren't allowed to watch.
No.
Well, of course we weren't allowed to watch it either when I was a kid, but I probably snuck around and find a way to do it.
Yeah, no, that would definitely.
Little Darlings. That was the name of the movie.
That would have been off limits. For me.
For sure.
All right. Well,
I think we've
belabored this Labor Day Saturday.
Oh, Ray says his childhood crush was Marianne from Gilligan's Island.
Yeah. Oh, right. She was so cute. Ray, was that Ray Guerrera?
Ray Guevara, yeah.
Guevara, yeah.
Our friend Ray.
She was, yes, of course. She was the girl next door.
That was always sort of a litmus test for men was, are you a Marianne or a Ginger guy?
Right, that's right.
Or do you go for like the glamour queen or the Kansas?
Or Mrs. Howell.
All right, you keep taking us in weird turns. Or it could be Skipper if you're, kind of go for the pudgy nice man, grumpy guy.
He was supposed to be like the unattractive one, but if you went back and look, he wasn't that unattractive.
Yeah, I'm sure he was and the professor too. I think the professor probably was.
I thought the professor was hot.
He was a good-looking guy, hot. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember when it started. We're way off track now, but we keep going. When Gilligan's Island started, they had the name of all the characters except for the Professor and Marianne.
Professor and
Marianne. When it started, it said, and the rest. It had every character except Professor and Marianne.
Then they added
and the rest, and then they added,
yeah.
Because I think the other actors demanded it. Then it was the Professor and Marianne here.
It's like Saturday Night Live starring and featuring, the difference.
Yeah.
So it's a caste society. What can I say?
Very much so.
All right, you guys. Thank you for spending an hour with us. Hopefully this was uplifting. We didn't pray.
Man, we didn't.
Gosh, can we pray after talking about little darlings?
And now somebody had a crush on Captain Kirk. And here's another. Wendy's crush was Clint Eastwood in Rawhide. Now Clint Eastwood was a good-looking guy
for decades and decades.
Yes, he was. Yes. No question about that. No question.
All right.
Now he's gone a little cuckoo, but
yeah. All right, I'm sorry. I'm having a hard time getting into let
us pray.
Let's pray for people.
Pray.
I'm really not there, but let's get there.
Yeah. So the prayer I think today is just thank you, God, for testing our hearts in all of this.
Yeah.
Thank you for letting us have these tests and just point us in the direction to pass them. And if our heart is truly for you, God, then just reveal who you are and what your heart is for the season. Don't let us be like the people that Jesus would say, you can see the sky and know the weather, but you don't know the signs of the times. You can look around you and call out what's going on, but you can't see where God wants us to go. I call that Martin Luther King, Dr. King called that being a thermostat rather than a thermometer. Be somebody who changes the temperature around you, doesn't just measure the temperature around you. So let us be thermostats, not just thermometers.
Yeah. Thank you, Lord. I agree with that. And God, I pray today, I just pray people who are maybe watching this now or later in the week, it kind of who cares what we think? God, you can reach people wherever they are. And if we've said things that are provoking or challenging in any way, I just pray, Lord, that you would open people's hearts, that you would connect with them directly in ways that only they can connect with. You know us intimately. You have fashioned us. You know every hair on our heads. So Lord, I pray that you would reach people this week, the things that they're worried about, that they're confused about, where there are places of loneliness or anger or hurt or pain. God, I pray you would show up and help us move through that, to know you in a way that we haven't known you in the past. I thank you for loving us so completely and so fully. And God, I thank you that you have held nothing back. You've held nothing back from us. And that you love us. So just meet us where we're at this week, God. And we release this time. We release our words. God, we release them to you. I pray that things that we've said that aren't from you, that you would let them fall off people's minds, but that they would grab onto things that do, in fact, reflect your heart for them. And we just submit this time to you. And I pray in Jesus' name.
Yeah. And our theme and motto that I usually have a wristband that I'm wearing says, God is not mad at you. So I just want to remind you that God is not mad at you today. And he's also not mad at those people who are your enemies. He's not mad at the people you think he should be mad at. And so that's just a reminder for us today. He's just not a mad guy. He's in a good mood, and he's calling us to be in a good mood with him and walk with him.
And I think he likes that we joked about childhood crushes.
I think he does. And even little darlings.
I don't know if I can go there with that. I'm feeling a little religious about that.
I was putting in the comments that every Sunday night, 6 p.m. Pacific, we have a spiritual gathering, take communion together. All are welcome. We don't put a litmus test on that. If you just feel like you want to join with the community, share life together, share faith, and ultimately we symbolize that by the Christian tradition of communion. We always say, bring a Diet Coke and a potato chip, whatever you got, and we'll do that communion together. So, but mostly it's just about sharing life and sharing faith with other people. So join us at 6 o'clock for that. You can get it on the website on our events page at npepodcast.com, or at the NPE Facebook page. We'll have the link on there for you to join us. So hopefully we can see you then.
Stay cool if you're living in California. Stay cool this Labor Day weekend, and hopefully you guys get some rest. Stay healthy and safe, and we'll see you next week.
Bye, guys.
Bye.